closely with the provinces and with other jurisdictions to make sure that these recommendations are taken into account. For those who are the federal responsibilities, Madam Speaker, I'd like to assure this House that we are taking the action that needs to be taken within the timeline. Thank you.
The statements by members, déclaration de...
Statements by members.
L'honorable député de HoC.
The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm proud to be part of a government that since 2016 has given more money to families. And this is thanks to non-taxable monthly payments that our government has listed nearly 300,000 Canadian children out of poverty. The Canada Child Benefit eases financial pressure on families. In Hochelaga, one organization called Entre Maman et Papa has noted that they want to help new parents after the birth of a child. And once they have a new child, parents impatiently wait for this vital assistance. In October 2019, more than 9,000 CCB payments were made in Hochelaga, benefiting over 15,000 children. All children deserve equal chance at success. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Durham.
Madam Speaker, this morning Canadian resource workers woke up to the terrible news about the Frontier mine cancellation in Alberta. Hundreds of thousands of families in our energy industry, our forestry industry, auto, manufacturing, all left behind by the Liberal government. They cancel pipelines, they ban tankers, they block projects. Capital investment is fleeing Canada, and even proud Canadian companies like Teck are giving up. The Shutdown Canada movement paralyzing our country was started by the shutdown Liberal government. We need pipelines, project approvals, and progress, not blockades, bans, and Liberal bafflegab. Even green transportation projects aren't supported by this government. I was in Hamilton last week and heard from the Leuna Union, Madam Speaker, for the LRT project that would employ 5,000 people and reduce emissions. This is an example of a Build Up Canada project that we need. The Infrastructure Minister is from Hamilton, Madam Speaker. Will she get behind this project, help working families, and reduce our emissions?
The Honourable Member for Acadie-Bathurst. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Rufin Gionnet was a well-known and well-respected member of my riding of Bathurst. On January 17th, at the age of 99 years and 7 months, he passed away peacefully, accompanied by his loved ones. He was one of the last World War II veterans. And after his military service, Mr. Gionnet became a well-known member of New Brunswick society for his passion for the shipbuilding industry. He co-founded the Bacaraquet shipyard and Fundy shipbuilding. And he was a small business owner, and he sat on the boards of many organizations and credit unions. He was also the former founder of a media company, the Acadie Nouvelle newspaper. We will be forever grateful for the service he rendered to Canada and to the rest of the world, and we'll remember him as a modern and courageous man. I would like to extend my condolences to his children and to all his friends and extended family. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I do want to remind members that the House is in session, and I would ask that you keep your conversations down or take them outside.
The Honourable for Repentigny. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I would like to thank Teck Resources for having dropped its Frontier oil sands project. The world is changing, and we can no longer skirt climate change issues. Even national resource players are realizing this. Even Teck, an oil sands promoter, has recognized that Canadian legislation does not allow us to reconcile fossil fuel operations with the fight against climate change. Today, a private company has withdrawn itself from a project to leave room for a broader conversation on environmental protection. Today, a private company has shown more leadership than the Government of Canada. And if even mining companies are at this point, it's time for us all political parties, to come to reason. Climate change is real. It is the biggest challenge for every country worldwide, and it's time for Canada to do its share. The honourable member for Miramichi-Grand Lake.
With a heavy heart to pay my respect to the late Charles Hubbard, who passed away on February 12th. He was a friend and a colleague of many of us here in this House. Charlie was Member of Parliament for Miramichi from 1993 to 2008 and served the people of the riding with great pride. He was the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development, Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Transport during the government of Paul Martin. Before entering politics, Charlie served in the Canadian Armed Forces, then in 1963 began his illustrious teaching career and later went on to become the first principal of Miramichi Valley High School and was also deeply involved with many community organizations over the years. Charlie had a love for the outdoors, which included farming, fishing, and I'd like to extend my condolences to his wife Pat, their children and grandchildren. Charlie was a good friend, a mentor to me, and a true champion of the Miramichi region. He will be missed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Montmagny, Liselay, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my riding, sports are very important. Athletes of all ages excel in basketball, volleyball, baseball, and figure skating, just to name a few. Last week, 2 hockey teams with young members from my riding in their lineups, won the 61st Quebec International Pee Wee Hockey Tournament. The winners include Les Alliés de Montmagny in the Inter-B category and the Océanique that are part of the Albatross team from Rivière-du-Loup in the Pee Wee AA Elite category. Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate these teams, their trainers, the parents, but above all, these young, passionate players for their efforts and the hard work. I think they'll remember this experience forever. Congratulations once again.
Honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, today I stand to pay tribute to Robert H. Lee, a remarkable British Columbian who passed away last week. Bob was born in Vancouver, the son of immigrants, and a stellar examples of the qualities that many immigrants bring to Canada: hard work and a philosophy of giving back. He graduated from business school at the University of BC and became a successful realtor, community builder, and a very generous philanthropist. As Chancellor of UBC, he created the UBC Properties Trust, making use of university lands to gain over $1.7 billion to fund UBC in perpetuity. The Robert H. Lee Graduate School, UBC Alumni Center, the Robert and Lily Lee Community Health Center, and Burrard YMCA are named after him and his family. Bob was a son of Vancouver who looked beyond himself and recognized the value of helping others. He was an exemplary human, and his legacy will continue to enrich us all.
Bravo.
The honourable member for Lac Saint-Louis.
The Tournament Hockey Old-Timers are a pillar of sporting life in Montreal's West Island. The league allows those of all ages who are passionate about playing our national sport the opportunity to put blade and stick to ice in friendly but vigorous competition.
I would like to congratulate the Kirkland Old-Timers for once again organizing another successful tournament this year, bringing together old-timer teams from across our region and from very remote regions as well.
5 years, the tournament's players, volunteers, and supporters, including local sponsors, have helped raise $1.2 million for local organizations. Thank you to League President Donald Clark and tournament co-chairs Peter Gibson and Alex Robertson for their hard work in making the 36th Kirkland Old-Timers Annual Hockey Tournament a resounding success.
Bravo. The honourable member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'm standing today proud to be representing the great people from Kootenay, Columbia, and honored they have put their trust in me to represent them. This weekend, I was bombarded with individuals upset about the illegal blockades, having a difficult time understanding why an illegal blockade is not dismantled immediately. A Supreme Court order is not, Mr. Speaker, not a guideline. The crisis we are in is a result of weak government demonstrating real lack of leadership. The rule of law is clear. If an illegal blockade is set up, then law enforcement agencies must respond. The RCMP in British Columbia is under contract with the province. The officer in charge of the RCMP there reports direct to the commissioner, who reports direct to the public safety minister. It's obvious there's no clear direction from our law enforcement agencies. I know I speak for the silent majority across Canada when I say there's no excuse for the government to not have responded immediately to shut down the illegal blockades. Mr. Speaker, the present crisis facing all Canadians is 100% due to our weak government demonstrating a lack of leadership.
The member for Winnipeg South.
Mr. Speaker, this past week, the Canadian Women's Curling Championship, the Scotties Tournament of Hearts, was held in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. 15 teams representing all provinces and territories put on an unforgettable display of curling. Emerging victorious was Team Manitoba's Carrie Einerson, Val Sweeting, Shannon Burchard, and Brianne Mailleur, winning the Scotties with a draw to the button in an extra end. What an exciting finish to an amazing week of curling, our other major national winter sport. Curling in Canada is one of the few sports that has reached gender parity in both television viewing audience and prize money, Mr. Speaker. So congratulations to all the women's teams who competed this week and took the roaring game to new heights. Good luck to our national champions at the Women's World Championships in Prince George, BC in March. And to Team Canada, Mr. Speaker, we say, hurry hard!
The honourable member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to celebrate Team Manitoba's big win at the Scotties Tournament of Hearts in Moose Jaw to become our Canadian Women's World Curling Champions. Team Manitoba, skipped by Carrie Anderson along with teammates Val Sweeting, Shannon Bouchard, and Brianne Mueller, curl out of the Gimli Curling Club and now riding the Selkirk Interlake Eastman. Manitobans, and indeed all Canadians, were on the edge of their seats watching yesterday's Scotties Championship final, especially as they headed into an extra end. As the newly crowned winners, Team Anderson will be back next year as Team Canada and has a berth at the 2021 Olympic trials. Team Anderson wins also marks the 11th time Manitoba has won the Scotties, tying for the record of the most all time. On behalf of all my colleagues, congratulations to Team Anderson on their hard-fought win, and best of luck as you represent Canada at the 2020 World Women's Curling Championships next month in Prince George. Go, Canada, go!
The member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, this week will go down in history books of our country as the week that the Liberals killed any hope of recovery for the Alberta economy. When I got off the plane last night and heard that due to the incompetence of this government, Teck Resources has shuttered its plans to build a $20 billion oil sands plant, I couldn't help but think of the old band song, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. These eco-lefties, these out of touch with reality, members of the Separatist Quebec Party, the Socialist NDP, and those social elites that sit in the back benches of the Liberal government are responsible for this decision that happened yesterday, Mr. Speaker. The Teck mine would have created tens of thousands of jobs and helped the Canadian economy. But because this Prime Minister was wiped out in the Western Canada in the last election, he said he heard the message, but he hasn't learned anything, Mr. Speaker. I asked the Prime Minister, resign before you ruin my country.
The honourable member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, on Friday I had the pleasure of attending the Niska celebration of HoC, held this year in the village of Gitlick-Tamix. 2 days of drumming, singing, and dancing marked the Niska New Year and the return of Ulican to the Nass River. It's hard to describe the honor of walking into the hall alongside the Simgiget and Siganamanak as drummers pound out the heartbeat of the Niska Nation and hundreds of voices join together in songs that echo across the generations. This year marked 50 years since the Gitlick-Tamix ceremonial dancers first came together to revive cultural traditions suppressed by colonialism. It was also a chance to cheer the triumph of the Gitmadik basketball team, who returned from the All-Native with their first Masters title in 21 years. I look forward to joining the Niska again this May in Lac Otsap for the 20th anniversary of BC's first modern treaty. To the Niska people, thank you for your warm welcome and ongoing friendship. Ho-bien!
L'honorable.
The honour member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, on December 30th, a violent fire burned down the building that housed the Boutique Création Atelier in Salaberry. It's important because it helps young women who are experiencing difficulties to reintegrate society. through sewing. This devastating fire meant that a second house was lost for some 60 women and who were supported and loved. So we're going to do a gene drive to allow this boutique to get back on its feet. The clothing that will be collected will be transformed by the young women into reusable bags and aprons and crafts and then sold to fund their activities. So therefore, I'm asking all parliamentarians to take part. I would personally invite you to donate a pair of jeans in the lobby of the Bloc Québécois by next Friday. To all the women involved in the Atelier Création, your resilience inspires me and I wholeheartedly support you.
Barry Innisfil.
At 8:42 on Saturday night, the NHL podcast Spit and Chicklets posted in capital letters on Twitter, "We got a Zamboni driver in net." In the second period of the Toronto Maple Leaf Carolina Hurricane game, the unbelievable happened. Carolina had already lost goalie James Reimer to injury in the first period, when in the second, backup goalie Peter Mrazek also got hurt. With no goalies, Carolina had to use an e-bug. E-bug, Mr. Speaker, is not a computer virus. It stands for emergency backup goalie. Sure, he plays net, but never when it has meant so much in front of so many as both teams battled for playoff spots. Now, it was a rough start for Ayers, but he settled in, stopping every shot he faced in the third period, securing a Carolina win, and was named first star of the game. His wife Sarah's reaction on Twitter said it best and likely reflected what all Canadians who were watching, including me, were thinking, but it would be unparliamentary of me, Mr. Speaker, to say what she posted. David Ayers will not win the Vezina Trophy, but he captured the country's imagination at a time when we needed something and someone to cheer for. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Whitby.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize and congratulate one of Whitby's finest, David Ayers. This past Saturday night, Dave, a coach with the Whitby Wildcats and Zamboni driver, donned a Toronto Marlies mask after being called up as the emergency backup goalie for the Carolina Hurricanes. That night, he went on to make 8 saves, helped lead the Hurricanes to a 6-3 victory over the Maple Leafs, and became an overnight sensation. He became the oldest goalie in NHL history to win his regular season debut at age 42. Being a lifelong Leafs fan, I can never remember a time where I was so proud of the outcome when the Leafs lost. I look forward to seeing him in a Leafs uniform next time. Dave, you make Whitby proud. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the people of Whitby and all members of this House, I congratulate Dave on his NHL debut and his performance Saturday night.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister showed how weak he is during the rail blockades. He could have used the tools available to show that we are subject to the rule of law. Instead, he decided to side with radical activists who are appropriating First Nations claims. Anyone who dare suggest that the law should have been enforced are criticized. Will the Prime Minister do things differently with these illegal blockades in the future? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. It's important to continue the work on reconciliation, even in difficult situations, and that is exactly what we did until we said enough was enough, the blockades had to be removed. And that is the approach that we took in seeking out a peaceful solution. We have to ensure that there aren't any shortages for Canadians using the rails. So we have to continue to work on reconciliation in a committed and positive way. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Illegal blockades had nothing to do with reconciliation. If people in Ontario want to support reconciliation efforts, then they would listen to the members of the Wet'suwet'en First Nations who support the Coastal GasLink project. But the problem is, Mr. Speaker, is that there is now a clear playbook for radical activists to follow, and they know that the Prime Minister will do literally nothing as the economy is brought to its knees. So, knowing that there are future projects that may be proposed, what will the Prime Minister do differently in the future to prevent the types of layoffs and economic damage that these radical activists have caused?
Honourable Prime Minister. His very first sentence in that question, he demonstrated that the Leader of the Opposition does not understand anything about reconciliation. People in this House, Conservative Party leaders, do not get to pick who speaks for Indigenous peoples. That needs to be done in a thoughtful, engaged way, and we demonstrated through this process that we can both protect reconciliation and protect Canada's economy as we move forward.
Before I go on to the next question, I just want to remind the honourable members that there are certain individuals who have strong voices, and I don't want to have to call them out. They are very obvious who they are, so I just want to point that out. The honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was willing to break the law, bend the rules, and even fired his Attorney General when he was trying to do a favor for his corporate friends at SNC-Lavalin. But when thousands of energy sector jobs are at stake, and when dozens of First Nations communities will benefit from these energy projects, the Prime Minister does literally nothing. So why is it that when it comes to his corporate crony insider friends, the Prime Minister is willing to break the law, but when it comes to providing hope and opportunity to thousands of Canadians, the Prime Minister refuses to uphold the law?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Speaker, Canadians expect their governments to stand up for jobs, and that's exactly what we've done every step of the way. What the member opposite simply doesn't understand is you cannot have a plan for jobs if you don't have a plan to fight climate change. It's about time he paid attention to that.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister lets radical activists shut down the rail network and anti-energy activists write his government policies, the market certainly gets the message. Oil and gas projects are being built all over the world right now, just not in Canada under his watch. The reason is this Liberal government. Now, expenditures in the energy sector are $42 billion lower than the previous government, and the Prime Minister has overseen over $100 billion in cancelled projects. So does the Prime Minister understand that when it comes to ensuring that the environment and the economy go hand in hand, that he's doing it wrong?
Hear, hear. Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the members opposite continue to refuse to understand the world is changing, that you can no longer build a strong economy if you are not fighting climate change at the same time. That is something that the members opposite have refused.
I just want to remind the honourable members of the loyal opposition that they did ask a question and they are waiting for an answer. Shouting is not going to make the answer any different. The Honourable Prime Minister.
Global investors have indicated that they need to see strong action on climate change. Canadians from coast to coast to coast want to see good jobs, but want to see stronger action on climate change. It is only the Conservative Party of Canada and its provincial counterparts that are standing against climate action and hurting our economy and jobs because of it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister doesn't understand that these decisions are a repudiation of his policies. Now, Tech Frontier was told that they had to lower their emissions, so they came up with industry-leading standards and had the lowest intensity of emissions in the sector. They were told that they had to consult with Indigenous communities. They did so, got partnership agreements with the 14 First Nations communities that were affected by it. They were told that the government of Alberta's industrial emitters policy would have to reach equivalency. This government granted that equivalency just last week. What else was Tech Frontier supposed to do to get a project built in this country, Mr. Speaker?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Conservatives continue to say that this project didn't move forward because of this government's leadership on climate. Well, let me point out what TEC itself actually says. I just want to remind the members that intimidating someone who's speaking is not a good way to have a friendly back and forth. So shouting, I just want to remind everyone not to shout during question period. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, they're not intimidating me. TEC said clearly, we support strong actions to enable the transition to a low-carbon future. TEC is also strong supporters of Canada's action on climate pricing and other climate policies such as legislated caps for oil sands emissions. It is the Conservative Party polarizing the debate on climate change that is putting our economy at risk.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, today is not a day where we can say it's business as usual. First Nations have said through this odd negotiation process in the public sphere, because there aren't any other negotiations, that if the RCMP were to withdraw, which doesn't seem to really have been the case, and that if the work was interrupted, there was a real possibility to remove the barricades. The Prime Minister knew that on Friday. He could have done something. Why is the Prime Minister not taking action to have the barricades removed? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we've worked very hard to achieve a peaceful solution to this situation, but we couldn't allow the barricades to remain in place. The RCMP withdrew its presence from a command post, as the Wet'suwet'en had requested. Unfortunately, even following that action, the barricades were not removed. That is why we had to move on with the following stages. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Doing the right thing, but doing it in the right way. Well, the Prime Minister could have resolved the situation, could have done so, but instead of doing it, will the Prime Minister acknowledge that perhaps he has even worsened and extended this crisis? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we showed positive commitment towards reconciliation and dialogue over a 10-day period. Once it became clear that the Indigenous communities were not prepared to negotiate in good faith with us, we changed our position. But I must point out that all police-related decisions are independent of government. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. We're facing a national crisis, and the Prime Minister is lacking leadership. First of all, he said it wasn't his responsibility. Then he accepted his responsibility and demanded patience. And then 3 days later, his patience ran out. When will the Prime Minister accept that it's his responsibility to reduce tension and take concrete action to do so? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker. We acknowledged that we needed national leadership, and that is what we showed by bringing together people for negotiations, by seeking out ways of resolving the crisis peacefully. Unfortunately, when we saw that negotiations are not in good faith, we had to change our position, but we would highlight once again that we are profoundly committed to reconciliation, on the road towards reconciliation, and we will continue. But we will do so in a way that will help Canadians across the country. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
At the end of the day, the buck stops with the Prime Minister. Yes. It's the Prime Minister's responsibility to de-escalate tensions. Now, he's continued to fail to show leadership. First, he doesn't accept that it was his responsibility. Then he finally says, okay, there's a federal responsibility, and urge patience, only to see that patience expire after 3 days, where he takes a page from the Conservative playbook and gives up on de-escalation. Yeah. Without ever having met with the hereditary chiefs. Mr. Speaker, When will the Prime Minister acknowledge that it's his responsibility to de-escalate, appoint a special mediator, and meet with the hereditary chiefs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Speaker, we have demonstrated every step of the way that we continue to work on the important efforts of reconciliation. We continue to journey with Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, along that journey, but it must be done in a responsible way. And when it became clear that there was no reciprocal openness to dialogue from the Wet'suwet'en hereditary leader chiefs, we made a shift in our posture. But we need to make sure that Canadians from coast to coast to coast continue to support reconciliation and continue to be secure in their jobs and the goods that they need. Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, under these Liberals, $200 billion in oil and gas gone. That's 16 times the GDP of Canada's aerospace sector and 10 times the automotive sector. 200,000 energy jobs gone, more than all the jobs in those sectors combined. This would be the national emergency for any leader. But this Prime Minister actively delays and blocks oil and gas and fails to apply the law equally to all Canadians. So here's the real question, Mr. Speaker. Does this Prime Minister want Alberta in Canada or not?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
The important work of growing our economy and protecting our environment goes beyond any single project. The government is committed to working with Alberta and the resource sector to make sure good projects move forward. Our government approved the Line 3 replacement project, and that is done. And that's why we always supported Keystone XL, where construction will soon begin in the U.S. As we speak, there are thousands of good, well-paying jobs that have been created in Alberta and BC because we did the hard work to get TMX right. We believe in the workers in this sector, and we believe in their families, and we have their backs. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
What a complete crock. This Prime Minister said he wants to phase out the oil sands, and his actions show it. So the market got the message, and he clearly doesn't care about Alberta. He was willing to break ethics laws and bully his Attorney General to save 9,000 jobs in SNC-Lavalin that were never actually at risk. Albertans want all Canadians and all sectors to succeed. But when 200,000 Albertans lose their oil and gas jobs, suicides spike by 30%, and people are losing hope and dignity, he blames everyone and everything else and does nothing. So does he want Alberta in Canada or not? And what will he do to stop the Bleeding East colonists?
I just want to remind the honourable members what constitutes parliamentary language. And when something is inflammatory, it is inflammatory. I just want to point that out, and it's unparliamentary. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we did the hard work necessary on TMX.
Me? I believe the Honourable Member for Lakeland has a question. No? Okay, very good. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we did the hard work necessary on TMX, and construction is underway, creating thousands of jobs. There have been over $8 billion in new petrochemical projects and thousands of jobs linked to those projects in Alberta alone. These are real investments in our energy sector and real results for Canadian and Alberta workers. These are jobs that will continue supporting the workers in those jobs. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The Honourable Member for Louis-Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, it's not a good day for Canada with the end of the Tech Frontier project. 10,000 jobs are lost, $20 billion in investments have been lost, but the company had done everything it had to and obtained all of the authorizations it needed to over 10 years. But the final authorization from the final government was what was lacking. Since July, the government has had this file on his table. We've got July, August, September, October, all of those months, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister did nothing. What's worse, he let MPs speak out publicly against the project, and it's been cancelled. Is the Prime Minister aware that he's once again attacking the Honourable Minister of the Environment? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Teck made the decision itself, and I understand that it was undoubtedly a very difficult decision for them. The decision shows the need for all levels of government to work together to take action on climate. Measures must be taken to reduce pollution and to provide certainty for corporations. We are working with all levels of government in Canada and with the resource sector to continue to create good jobs and to ensure clean, sustainable growth for all. The honourable member for Louis Saint-Laurent. 10,000 good jobs would have been created, but the government did its utmost to prevent that from happening. Last year, Mr. Speaker, Quebecers used 10.6 billion litres of oil. And that was last year. 60% of that oil is from the U.S. If the Liberals and the BQ are happy to encourage Donald Trump, well, that's their case. We're supporting Canadian energy. Why is the government again trying to thwart these energy products in Canada? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources. As I said in English earlier, we support the sector. We approved Line 3. Keystone XL is something we approved. And construction is begun in the U.S. Now, TMX. Shovels are in the ground. We support the project. We did the hard work necessary on TMX. That means thousands of jobs in Alberta and BC. We will continue to support this sector and the good jobs created in it.
Bridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the TEC project would have contributed billions in revenue and created thousands of desperately needed jobs in Alberta and across Canada. Yes. But TEC has withdrawn its application for the project, citing political unrest and public safety fears as shown by recent blockades. TEC knows that this Prime Minister lacks the courage to defend Canada's economic interests. Yes. Worse, energy and resource companies know that they are not wanted in Canada. How will Canada attract investment and the jobs that come with it when we have a Prime Minister that won't get the job done?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This was TEC's decision. We respect their decision. I am sure it was a difficult one. The decision made by TEC Resources and the letter that was sent to me by the TEC CEO demonstrates clearly the need for all levels of government to be working together to deliver climate action and clean growth. We need to take action to reduce pollution and in doing so provide business certainty. In his letter, Mr. Lindsay said we need to move past jurisdictional and partisan fighting. That's right. We have been and will continue to work with all orders of government to make progress on addressing climate change and moving forward with a clean economy.
The member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the withdrawal of TEC Resources sends a devastating message that Canada is closed for business. Despite meeting all environmental requirements and being a model for engaging with Indigenous communities, TEC Resources can't see a path forward. The Prime Minister's weak leadership has allowed the erosion of the rule of law, leaving companies with no choice but to abandon Canada. Will the Prime Minister reverse course and create a country where critical national projects can be built, or has destroying these projects been his plan all along?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, as I said before, this was TEC Resources' decision. We respect that decision. I am sure it was a difficult one to make. The TEC decision and the CEO's letter show the need for us to have serious climate plans that cuts pollution, incentivizes innovation, and ensures a healthy economy and investor confidence. Our government has a serious plan that includes a price on pollution. We're moving to exceed the Paris targets, and we will be working towards net zero by 2050. We need collaboration with the provinces to do that. We are going to be moving forward in collaboration with our provincial partners to ensure that we have both climate action and clean growth.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. One thing is clear, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has said that he didn't decide to make the decision to withdraw the RCMP. He didn't make a decision to ask for a suspension of work in the area. He did not ask for the police to get involved in Ontario, and now we've learned that he's not the one who had the wisdom to have the Tech Frontier project suspended. Is the only decision the Prime Minister able to make is to make a decision to not make any decisions?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Let me be very clear. We remain committed to dialogue and reconciliation, but we also have acknowledged the impact that these blockades have been having on everyday Canadians, on their livelihoods and on their safety. Mr. Speaker, we've been crystal clear. The barricades must come down and the law must be obeyed. But to be equally clear, Mr. Speaker, the government does not direct the police in their operations. They are guided by the law and by their conscience. And so we will continue to remain committed to working with Indigenous leadership on the reconciliation agenda and to get those services restored.
The
Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Following one's conscience is a good idea. Why don't they try it for a change? Now that we've seen the government's failed approach, now that we can see that it might well worsen and extend the situation, will the Prime Minister, or if we have the Minister, going to take the phone and say we're going to withdraw the police, the RCMP, put in place a discussion table on the condition that today you remove all the barricades?
L'honorable Ministre. Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we remain committed to upholding the rule of law. And just to be clear for those who might be confused on what that means, what it means is that we urge all Canadians to obey the rule of law. We do not instruct the police in the conduct of their investigations or in their operations. And Mr. Speaker, as the Supreme Court has said, the Commissioner of the RCMP is not subject to political direction, and like every other police officer similarly engaged, she is answerable to the law. Mr. Speaker, at one time, the government opposite understood that, and former Prime Minister Harper said that the RCMP have an investigative process, and the government does not interfere in that process. We trust the...
I just want to remind the honourable members, when they shout something out and they look at me in the corner of their eye, it doesn't mean I can't see them just because they think I can't see them. I just want to make that clear. I can hear them, and it's very obvious. L'honorable député d'Abitibi.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Bay James Nunavekiyou. Mr. Speaker, the railway crisis won't be resolved if we don't get to the bottom of the issue. Here's proof. Well, the barricades in Ontario were lifted this morning. The one in Kanawaki has extended to Highway 132, the Mercier Bridge, and Kanesatake. The epicenter of the crisis is in British Columbia, Mr. Speaker. That's where action is required. All conditions have been in place for 5 days to start a dialogue with the Wet'suwet'en with a view to lifting the barricades. What is the Prime Minister waiting for?
The Honourable Minister.
Our government has worked 24/7 to resolve this issue in a peaceful, sustainable way. We acknowledge the serious impact that the barricades have had on Canadians. That is why I've been in contact with the hereditary leaders in Wet'suwet'en throughout the last week with a view to finding a peaceful solution, and it's time for the barricades to be taken down.
Wrestling.
Mr. Speaker, last night Canadians received terrible news about Tech Frontier. The Liberals' attacks on Canadian resource projects continue to hurt the country. We're going to lose 7,000 new jobs in Alberta, and the rest of Canada is going to miss out on $70 billion in investments.
Unbelievable.
But you know what? We know that this makes the Liberal MPs happy because this is exactly what they wanted. It's no surprise that they made it all but impossible for new projects to be built. So what is the Prime Minister going to do to address the national unity crisis that we are now facing?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, as I said before, this was Tech Resources' decision. We respect that decision. Mr. Speaker, the Tech Resources CEO, in his letter to me, clearly stated something very important, and I quote, "Global capital markets are changing and investors and customers are increasingly looking for jurisdictions to have a framework in place that reconciles resource development and climate change in order to produce the cleanest possible products." Mr. Speaker, we agree. We need to work going forward to ensure that we have thoughtful and aggressive plans to address climate change and to promote clean growth. In the modern world, the economy and the environment must go together.
Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Northern Gateway, Energy East, Trans Mountain, and now Tech Frontier. The Liberal government is sending a message, and it is loud and clear. Canada is closed for business. The noose has been tied. The Prime Minister may be relieved that Teck is withdrawing, but on behalf of hardworking Canadians, I would urge him to consider 7,000 jobs and $70 billion worth of investment. Investment that would have built hospitals, schools, roads, bridges, and other important infrastructure. The Prime Minister's hatred towards the energy sector is breeding dissension in this country. What will he do to reproduce unity across this great nation?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
As I indicated previously, this was a decision taken by Teck Resources. We respect that decision. I'm sure it was a difficult one. I would also point out...
Okay, I heard a term that really is not parliamentary.
So now call him out.
Does the honourable member want to withdraw it? No. Okay, I'll keep that in mind for when we start, we could proceed. The Honourable Minister, I'll let him continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his letter, the Teck CEO said that Canada should be, and I quote, a global provider of sustainable, climate-smart resources to support the world's transition to a low-carbon future. We agree, Mr. Speaker. We need to be taking strong action on climate change in order to promote clean economic growth. That is something that those on the other side of this House do not understand, but it is something that we need to be working on very actively in partnership with the provinces and territories, with Indigenous communities, and with municipalities and all Canadians.
Hear, hear. Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, Teck was forced to make this decision because the Prime Minister refused to show any real leadership. This is a loss of $70 billion to Canada's economy, money which would have gone to schools, hospitals, and infrastructure, not to mention the 7,000 badly needed jobs it would have created in Alberta. This Prime Minister has broken faith with Albertans. What is he going to do to fix this national unity crisis that he has created?
The environment. The greatest threat to the economy going forward is having an official opposition that has no plan to address climate change. At the end of the day, we need to ensure that we are moving forward in a manner that addresses the climate issue and is promoting clean growth. Canada needs to ensure that its brand of developing low-carbon products to the world and selling those throughout the world is something that fits within the context of where this world is going in the context of fighting climate change. That is something we are committed to doing. That is something we are working on now, and we will continue to do so.
Hear, hear. Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, no one should have to go without the medicine they need because they can't afford it. But that's the reality for millions of Canadians. Worse, each year thousands of people die from preventable causes simply because they lack proper drug coverage. Today, New Democrats will introduce historic legislation to establish universal, comprehensive public pharmacare, a plan that will save billions of dollars every year. Will the Liberals support our Canada Pharmacare Act and finally ensure every Canadian gets the medicine they need?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I agree with my colleague that no Canadian should have to choose between paying for prescription or putting food on the table. We've already done more than any government in a generation to lower drug prices, and now we're working with provinces and territories to implement pharmacare as guided by the HoC report. This will build on the steps that we've already taken, including new rules on patented drugs that will save Canadians over $13 billion. I look forward to working with the NDP to ensuring that all Canadians can access the medication that they need. Thank you.
A member for Vancouver East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals have been promising pharmacare for 23 years.
Yeah.
People end up in ER or hospitalized because they can't afford their medication, and hundreds die prematurely every year. Instead of helping Canadians, the Liberals have chosen to help deliver bigger and bigger profits to big pharma and insurance companies. In this minority government, will the Liberals stop breaking their promise and support the NDP bill to deliver universal, comprehensive, single-payer pharmacare to Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Speaker, and I'm fairly confident if this Liberal government had been here 24 years ago, we would have been there already. And I'm very excited to be part of a government that is committed to making sure that people don't have to choose between medication and food. As I've said, we have taken important steps towards that goal. We'll continue to work with all Canadians and provinces and territories to ensure ensure that people have access to the medications they need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For London North Centre.
Speaker, while our economy has seen incredible growth in recent years, we know that this prosperity isn't always equally shared. As a government, we've created over 1 million jobs in the past 4 years, but we must make sure that all Canadians benefit. Can the Minister of Economic Development update this House on what we're doing to create opportunities for people in my region of southwestern Ontario?
Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague from London North Centre for his great work and great question. Obviously, Canadians need to have access to good paying jobs in their region and need to be able to stay in their hometown. That's why we're creating opportunities all across the country for them. Recently, we announced 1,000 new jobs in southwestern Ontario, 40 new jobs in Windsor in the auto sector, 170 new jobs in Leamington, the tomato capital of Canada, at Highbury-Canco, and also 700 new jobs in clean tech in Sarnia and also in the energy sector. Thank you so much.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Ontario and Quebec governments have started removing barricades in their provinces. They had asked the Prime Minister for coordinated action, but still ran up against his lack of leadership. The Canadian economy is clearly suffering, but public safety is also at stake. The Prime Minister refuses to budge, and his empty rhetoric is only making things worse. When is the Prime Minister going to take charge of the situation?
Public safety.
Mr. Speaker, just to be very clear, the Prime Minister has been unequivocal in his acknowledgement and recognition of the impact that these barricades are having on Canadians from across the country. And last week, he urged the people that were on those barricades to take them down and restore service. But, Mr. Speaker, to be equally clear, our government does not direct the police. And, Mr. Speaker, perhaps we can just rely on the words of the previous public safety minister under the Conservative government, in which he said, "I have full confidence in the judgment of the RCMP while respecting the operational independence of the RCMP." Mr. Speaker, that principle still applies.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the RCMP Commissioner was at the urgent meeting last Monday with the Prime Minister. Canadians waited patiently for the Prime Minister to take concrete action to end a crisis that could easily have been averted. For over 2 weeks, the police refused to step in. Clearly, they were under orders not to. Why did the Prime Minister order the police not to do anything?
Mr. Speaker, respectfully, the member opposite is wrong. And in fact, no direction and no instruction was given to the RCMP or any other police service. Mr. Speaker, in Canada, the rule of law is underpinned by the independence of the police. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we respect that principle, and we have confidence in our police agencies to exercise their responsibilities to uphold the law and to maintain the peace.
The Honourable Member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, we're only a week away from widespread heating propane shortages. Hundreds of thousands of people could be without heat. People could freeze, pipes will burst, and homes will be damaged. Now, the blockade at Tyendinaga appears to be coming down, but the unrest continues. Will the Minister of Public Safety commit to working with his provincial counterparts to see new general directives issued to law enforcement by him at the federal level and by his provincial counterparts at the provincial level to ensure that any future blockades of critical infrastructure are taken down in a more timely manner?
The Honourable Minister.
And again, Mr. Speaker, we have acknowledged and recognized the impact that these blockades are having on Canadians across the country, and it's why we've been unequivocal in the need for the barricades to come down. We have worked very closely with all of our provincial counterparts on this matter, but let me also be clear. The provincial ministers of community and public safety and I recognize that we do not give instructions to the police. They receive their instructions from the law, from the courts, from their own policies and procedures. Mr. Speaker, we have confidence in law enforcement to do its job, and we'll continue to support their efforts to maintain the peace.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Mr. Speaker, for 2 weeks, the Canadian economy has been brought to its knees by a handful of activists. Via rail service has been stopped across the country, disrupting tens of thousands of Canadians who are trying to visit family or get to a business meeting. Nearly 1,000 VIA employees have been laid off, unable to work while the blockades remain. That's right. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians on what date will full, and I repeat, full, VIA rail service resume?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Very aware of the inconvenience that this has had for a lot of passengers that depend on Via Rail. I myself am a regular Via Rail traveler. I know the impact that this has had on a large number of Canadians, and that's why the good news is that Via Rail has begun to bring back some of its trains, namely between Montreal and Quebec, since the St. Lambert blockade has been removed, also between Toronto and Windsor, and we're hoping very soon to fully re-establish the service between Montreal and Toronto.
The Honourable Member for Avignon, La Métis, Matapan, Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, the blockades crisis won't be resolved without dialogue with the Wet'suwet'en. Luckily, despite federal inaction, the RCMP has understood that it's part of the problem and has offered to withdraw from the territory. That's great, but the confidence with the RCMP has been broken and it won't be restored overnight. What is this government planning to do to restore confidence between the Wet'suwet'en and law enforcement agencies? Is the government open to an Indigenous policing solution? The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member opposite for her question. We are continuing to be open to meeting with Indigenous leaders in BC, and now more than ever, the dialogue needs to remain open in order to lead to solutions such as the one suggested by the member opposite. In order to get there, there has to be dialogue. People have to come to the table. So we're available, and we're waiting for the meetings to take place. The Honourable Member for Montarville. On Friday, when the Prime Minister offloaded the problem of the railway blockades onto the provinces, François Legault asked for the bare minimum. He asked the Prime Minister to coordinate the lifting of the barricades with the provinces. Obviously, once again, Ottawa did not listen to Quebec. The barricades have been lifted in Ontario, but we still have a full-blown crisis in Quebec. Does the Prime Minister realize that his lack of leadership has fanned the flames in Kanawaki? What will he do to finally resolve this crisis?
Minister for Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to advise the member opposite and other members of this House how closely we are working with our provincial counterparts in every province and territory, including in the province of Quebec. There has been ongoing discussions between us about how best to resolve this situation, but we all remain committed to upholding the rule of law. We are not instructing our police services, but we are working closely together to respond to this crisis.
Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Rock.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister claims reconciliation is a priority, yet his inaction has invalidated the work Wet'suwet'en leaders have done to breathe life into reconciliation. Liberals' failure to champion Indigenous-supported projects like Coastal GasLink, like Tech Frontier Mine, has killed over 7,000 jobs. BC MLA Ellis Ross has said the blockades will set back reconciliation 20 years. Yeah. Speaker, when will this Prime Minister stop emboldening radical activists and start working for Indigenous Canadians?
Yeah. Yeah. The Honourable Minister for Crown Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I think the member opposite needs to understand that Indigenous nations have to determine these decisions themselves. This is about understanding that going forward, the hereditary leadership plus the elected chief and council need to come forward to work with to form their governments, to write their constitution, to write their laws, and we are working on that every day as this government.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
The government told Tech that it needed to achieve certain things to get approval. One, it needed to get the regulator to sign off. Check. They told the company that they would need the local First Nations to sign off. 14 of them did. All 14 of them. Yep. Check. They told the company that it would have to tackle emissions, and the company said, no problem. We'll go to zero net emissions by 2050. Check. If after meeting all of the government's demands, this project still couldn't go ahead, what project will ever get approved again in this country?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will reiterate, this was Teck Resources' decision. We respect their decision. I know that it was certainly not an easy one for them. The decision that was made by Teck Resources in the letter that was sent to me by the Chief Executive Officer underlines the importance of both taking climate action and in looking at responsible resource development. Certainly, I will tell you that Teck Resources did an extremely good job in engaging with local First Nations communities. We have representatives of the Mikisew Cree who are here with us today, and I think that it is a model for how those kinds of consultations can be done going forward.
Here. Well, member for Carleton.
So the government claims that the company invested 10 years and $1 billion and then abandoned the project simply because Canada doesn't do a good enough job on climate policy. They've been in power for almost 5 years. Why aren't they doing a better job on climate policy then? That caused this project to disappear. 7,000 jobs, 14 Aboriginal communities losing opportunity, $20 billion of upfront investment, $70 billion of tax revenue. Does this government realize the enormous cost of its anti-energy obstructionism?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Once again that this was a decision made by Teck Resources. I'm sure it was a difficult one for Teck Resources, but I would say that one of the things that was highlighted in the letter that the Teck CEO sent was the fact that it is partisan bickering over addressing climate change that is the problem. That we have an opposition that has no climate plan, that we have provinces that have not yet put into place robust climate plans. It is so important that we work together to ensure that we are growing a clean economy in the context of addressing climate change in a serious way. That is something the other side of the House has not yet learned.
The Honourable Member for Cumberland Colchester.
Well, Alan, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Kejimkujik National Park is dear to the hearts of Nova Scotians.
It's a magnificent place where Canadians come to see ancient petroglyphs.
Invasive species, and no, not the Conservatives. Can the Minister of Environment please tell us what he's doing to protect Kejimkujik's trees against the hemlock woolly adulgid beetle? Thank you.
I just want to remind the honourable members that we're trying. Do I have the right to speak? I just want to make sure that everybody's okay with that. I just want to remind the honourable members that when we're asking questions on either side, try to be respectful regardless of what you're saying, and inflammatory can mean different things to different people. Mais en français, dans le nord de
In French, in Northern Ontario, we have an expression that's very common. It means you're doing something that's going to have an unintended result.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member from Cumberland Colchester for the question. Our government is committed to preserving and protecting our national parks so that they can be enjoyed for generations to come. Last December, we announced a federal investment of $1.4 million to enhance existing efforts to protect the threatened eastern hemlock forest in Kejimkujik National Park. Parcs Canada continuera.
Parks Canada will continue to work with partners like the Indigenous communities to protect this important natural habitat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Le député de Beauce.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the agricultural economy is at the point of no return. The railway blockades have had devastating impacts on the market, so much so that some farmers have told me their livestock could go hungry this week. Meanwhile, the Agriculture Minister was all smiles in Washington, having her picture taken with officials from Mexico and Argentina. Can the minister explain why she was out of the country at the height of the crisis, and what does she have to say to farmers who are extremely concerned about this government's lack of leadership? The Honourable Minister of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, I recognize that the situation is very grave for farmers, processors, and exporters all across the country, and I stand with my colleagues in the field I was in Washington for 24 hours with American, Mexican, and Argentine counterparts to talk about the importance of rules-based international trade and science-based as well. Thank you.
In Kent, Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, the illegal rail blockades are still up and are crippling Canada's economy. Canadian farmers rely on the rail system, and every day these blockades are up, it causes 5 days of backlog to get the rails back to normal. There's a backlog of 20,000 grain cars costing farmers more than $300 million so far. Propane levels are also critically low. On Friday, the Minister of Agriculture decided to skip the cabinet meeting dealing with the blockades to dine with diplomats in Washington. Why was the minister not in Ottawa dealing with the crisis facing our farmers?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
I know how hard the situation is for our farmers this year. 2019 has been very difficult, and the rail blockage are making it even more difficult. I work on that on a constant basis with my colleagues because this is really important. But it is also important to spend 24 hours in Washington with my colleagues from the United States, from Mexico, from Argentina, to talk about and to move things to make sure that we have international trade based on science and based on rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Number 4, Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, the Agriculture Minister talks about rule and trade. We can't trade if we can't move our product, and they're not even standing up for the laws right here in Canada. This is a crisis, and every day it goes on, it hurts our farmers even more. The propane shortage right now is critical. We have more than 100 ships off the BC coast waiting to be loaded, and a backlog of 20,000 grain cars. This is costing Canadian farmers more than $300 million, and they cannot afford this weak Liberal leadership.
That's right.
Why, during this crisis, did the minister feel it was more important not to be here, at home, in Canada, fighting for Canadian farmers?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know what? I can do two things at the same time. I can be supporting my farmers here in Canada and also... And I can also be supporting and defending international trade based on rules and science. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of National Revenue has launched the 2020 tax filing season. This is a good opportunity to remind Canadians of what our government has accomplished over the past year. We've cut taxes for the middle class, increased the Canada Child tax benefit, and introduced the Canada Workers benefit, all in the goal of putting more money into Canadians' pockets. Can the Minister give us an update on CRA's service improvements, making it easier for Canadians to access the money they are entitled to? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague from Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel. Our government is constantly seeking ways to improve CRA's services to make it easier than ever for Canadians to file their taxes. We have Charlie the chatbot, and people can submit their questions online to Charlie. They can identify themselves by a PIN now. It has never been easier, faster, or more secure to file your taxes. And I can never stress enough that all Canadians should file their taxes, because without filing, there's no benefits.
Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Albertans are paying the price for a failure of leadership by both Jason Kenney and Justin Trudeau. Tech's decision last night.
I just want to remind the honourable members that when they're referring to someone in the chamber, we refer to them by their riding or by their position, but not by their name. The honourable member.
The Prime Minister. Tech's decision last night is a direct result of their failure on climate change and our energy sector. In Alberta, families and businesses that create jobs need certainty from this government, not more failure. The path to a strong economic future requires federal leadership and investment in economic diversification. I want to ask, again, what the Prime Minister is doing to help Albertans diversify our economy and protect and create jobs.
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said before, this was a decision taken by Teck Resources. I know that it probably was a difficult decision for them. The Government of Canada has thought very, very carefully about the letter that Don Lindsay, the CEO of Teck Resources, sent to me. In it, he talks about the need for us to be aggressively fighting climate change and doing so in a manner that promotes clean economic growth. That is exactly what we have been doing through the Pan-Canadian Framework on Climate Change and Clean Growth, which was negotiated with the provinces and territories. It is something that we certainly intend to accelerate as we go forward to 2050 and the target of net zero.
Honourable Member for Vancouver-Grenville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Reconciliation requires long overdue and urgent work. Fundamental legislative and policy changes, new ways of making decisions, meeting the standards of UNDRIP and supporting Indigenous nations as they rebuild. After the immediate crisis is addressed, the need for transformative change will still remain. How will the Prime Minister regain the trust, respect, and moral authority to do the true reconciliation work that is so desperately required? And does the Prime Minister have the resolve to do what is right and not what partisan advisors tell him is politically expedient?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I was honored to receive in my mandate letter from the Prime Minister the task of implementing legislation that will implement UNDRIP in Canadian law. That is a priority for our government, Mr. Speaker. We have promised to do it by the end of the year 2020, and we will go ahead engaging with Indigenous Canadians and engaging with other Canadians in order to fulfill that mandate promise.
And that's all for today as far as question period goes. The Honourable Member for New Brunswick Southwest has a point of order, I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During today's question period, the member for Lakeland, my colleague, asked a question. She was reprimanded by yourself for, I think, charged language. It's not clear on this side, at least, what that language was. Was it for using the word crock? Was it for saying that Alberta is bleeding? Was it for highlighting the dramatic spike in suicides? Because what
I believe we're getting into a debate that extends. The word that she used was the first term that was mentioned by the Honourable Member. That does have, I just want to remind the Honourable Members that they can't do indirectly what they can't do directly. Thank you. Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Speaker, I too rise on a point of order, and it is in regards to comments made by the Honourable Member from Lakeland. Today is a very big day. It's actually been a very passionate